All right, diving right in today. We're taking a look at episode 5 of Fluent English Vibes on YouTube.
Cool. Cool.
They pack a lot of practical English into this one, focusing on everyday situations that, well, can trip us up sometimes.
Yeah, those little things.
Exactly. It's like a conversational cheat sheet, whether you're brushing up on your skills or, maybe getting ready for a trip or something.
I like that, a cheat sheet.
They cover greetings, asking for help in a store, ordering at a restaurant, small talk, you name it. Even how to end a conversation gracefully.
Hmm.
Without that awkward, okay, bye.
Uh, it's funny how those little things can feel so big sometimes.
Totally.
Yeah.
So they start with greetings and how important it is to get the level of formality right. Like they break it down into those 3 levels, formal, neutral, and casual.
Right.
And they really emphasize that if you mess that up, it can lead to some pretty awkward moments, especially in professional settings.
For sure. You don't want to be too casual with your boss, but being super formal with your friends can be weird too.
Like imagine greeting your boss with a casual, hey, what's up?
Or calling your buddy, good evening, sir.
Oh man, the awkward silence. But yeah, they're right. Context is everything.
And it's not just the words either. They point out how important nonverbal cues are too. Like even if you have the perfect greeting, a weak handshake or avoiding eye contact can totally ruin your first impression.
Make sense?
A warm smile, confident posture, those things speak volumes. It's all about being approachable and engaged.
Okay, so let's imagine ourselves needing help in a store, which, let's be honest, we've all been there.
Yeah.
They have this little sample dialogue in the episode. And what I thought was really interesting was how the customer starts with, excuse me, before asking for help.
Ah, good catch.
Yeah. It seems so basic, but it makes such a big difference in terms of politeness, especially in a busy environment.
For sure. It's respectful. It's like acknowledging the employee's time.
Nobody wants to feel like they're being barked at.
Exactly.
All right, now picture this. We're at a restaurant, menu in hand, and ready to order.
Okay, I'm there.
So the episode gives a bunch of different phrases we can use. I'd like, ooh, can I get cane? What are your thoughts on those?
They're good, solid phrases, clear and easy to understand. What I like is they also give you some variations like, could I have, which is a bit more polite, or I'll take,
Yeah.
which is more casual.
I see. So you can adapt to the setting and how you feel.
Right.
It's like having a whole linguistic toolkit.
I like that, a toolkit.
Speaking of navigating social situations,
Yeah.
let's talk about small talk. I think we've all had those moments where we're like, what do I say now?
Oh, yeah, struggling to keep that conversation going.
So what are some tips they give in the episode?
Well, they talk about sticking to those safe topics like the weather, sports, weekend plans. Those kinds of things are usually pretty relatable.
Right.
But there's a track there.
Oh.
It's not enough to just rattle off facts, like it's sunny or I'm going to the park. You have to engage with the other person, show some interest.
So it's not just about the topic itself, but how you interact.
Exactly. This is where that active listening comes in. It's about more than just hearing the words, but like picking up on cues, asking follow-up questions, showing you're really listening.
They even give this example conversation, these 2 strangers at a bus stop.
Mm-hmm.
And even a mundane topic like the bus being late can spark a connection if you approach it the right way.
Right. And that example also shows how important those nonverbal cues are, like making eye contact, nodding, smiling. Those things encourage the other person to keep talking.
It's like a silent way of saying, I'm listening, I care.
Yeah, and small talk is kind of like a dance, right? This back and forth.
You're both contributing and building something together. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to something that can be a bit nerve-wracking, especially in another language. Making an appointment.
Uh-oh, yeah.
What I found interesting is they acknowledge that the whole situation can be intimidating, not just the language itself,
Right.
but they give those key phrases to get the conversation started. Like, I'd like to schedule an appointment, or do you have any slots available? But they go beyond that too, right?
Definitely. They talk about speaking clearly, confirming the details, thanking the receptionist. It's about being organized, respectful.
Showing that you're confident and competent.
Exactly.
And they even touch on being mindful of those cultural norms when making appointments.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, in some cultures, it's okay to be a little late, but in others, being on time is super important.
That's a good point. Good reminder.
Okay, so we've covered greetings, asking for help, ordering food, small talk, making appointments. But even the best conversations have to end sometime. So how do we wrap things up politely?
Right.
What does the episode say about that?
They give some useful phrases like, "It was nice talking to you, I should get going now," or "Have a great day." But the tricky part is knowing when to use them.
So it's not just memorizing the phrases, but like reading the situation.
Exactly. Are they checking their watch, shifting their weight, looking at their phone? Those can be signs they're ready to wrap things up.
It's a subtle dance of social cues.
It is. It is.
So we've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive, exploring all these everyday English conversations. But there's so much more to uncover in this Fluent English Vibes episode. Stick with us.
You know what really stood out to me in this episode? The part about active practice. It's not enough to just know these phrases, you got to use them.
Right, right. Put them into action.
Exactly. Like they have these little practice exercises sprinkled throughout, repeating the phrases out loud, even if you're alone.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
It might feel a little silly talking to yourself,
But it works. It helps you remember.
yeah, it's like a dress rehearsal, gets you comfortable with the sounds.
And no audience pressure.
Exactly. And what I thought was really cool, they encourage you to look for opportunities to use these phrases in real life.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Simple stuff, chatting with a barista, asking for directions.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, those little interactions might seem small, but they're like mini language learning adventures.
I like that. It's like turning your daily routine into an English playground.
Exactly. Speaking of playgrounds, they briefly mention creating an immersion experience at home, but they don't really go into it.
Yeah. That's interesting. There's so much you can do with that.
Right. Even if you're not in an English-speaking country, there are so many ways to surround yourself with English.
Like what? Give us some ideas.
Movies, TV shows, podcasts, obviously, but also switch your phone settings to English. Listen to music in English.
Oh, that's a good one. I never thought of that.
Yeah. And the key is to not just passively consume, but actively engage with it. Write down new words. Look them up. Use them in sentences.
It's like building your own personal English language lab.
Exactly. It's about making English part of your daily life.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. The episode touches on cultural nuances, how certain phrases or gestures can mean different things in different cultures.
Yeah, that's where things can get tricky.
Right. Like I've heard direct eye contact can be polite in some cultures, but in others, it's like you're being aggressive.
Oh, for sure. And it's not just eye contact. Think about personal space, humor, even the way you compliment someone. What's okay in one culture can be totally off in another.
So how do we avoid accidentally stepping on someone's toes, so to speak?
Well, they give some general tips, like be observant. Watch how people interact with each other.
Like a cultural detective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And do some research before you travel or interact with people from different cultures.
There's tons of information online.
Oh, yeah. Travel blogs, etiquette guides. It's like getting a cultural cheat sheet before you go.
I love that. So let's revisit some of those scenarios we talked about earlier, but this time, let's think about those cultural differences. We talked about choosing the right level of formality for greetings. Do you think that varies across cultures?
Absolutely. Some cultures are just naturally more formal. It's not just the words you use, but your tone, your body language.
So like in some places, you bow when you greet someone.
Right. And even the depth of that bow can mean different things, or how firm you shake someone's hand.
It's not just the words, but the whole context.
Exactly. Language is more than words. It's a way of connecting with people. Okay, what about asking for help in a store? Think there are cultural differences there?
I guess so.
Yeah.
Some people are more direct than others.
Exactly. In some cultures, it's okay to be really upfront when you need help. But in others, it's better to be more indirect. Maybe start with a little small talk first.
So like, oh, it's a lovely day, by the way, I'm looking for.
Exactly. And even the way you phrase the question can make a difference. Using a more formal structure like, could you possibly tell me?
Yeah.
Rather than just, where is...
It's like adding a layer of politeness.
Right. And those nonverbal cues matter too. Like pointing can be rude in some places. It's about being aware of those subtle things.
Okay, let's move on to ordering food. What about cultural differences there?
Oh, tons. Food is such a big part of culture.
Yeah, like leaving food on your plate. I've heard that's rude in some cultures, but in others, it means you're full and satisfied.
Right. Or how you signal to a waiter that you're ready to order. In some places, you make eye contact and raise your hand. In others, you might call out to them.
And don't forget about tipping. That can be totally different depending on where you are.
It's important to do your research. But even if you make a mistake, a sincere apology goes a long way. Okay, let's talk about small talk. Do cultural differences play a role there?
Oh, definitely. What you talk about can be really different.
Exactly. Some cultures are okay with talking about personal stuff, but in others, that's way too private for casual conversation. And even safe topics, like the weather, can be tricky. Some cultures are more comfortable with strong opinions, while others are more reserved.
It's about being sensitive to those differences.
Right. Speaking of sensitivity, what about making appointments? Think there are cultural differences there.
Hmm. Maybe with how punctual you're expected to be.
Exactly. The whole concept of time can be different. In some cultures, time is very structured. Appointments start and end right on time. But in others, it's more fluid.
So like a 10 o'clock appointment could actually mean anytime between 10 and 10:30.
Exactly. And the way you communicate about the appointment can be different too. In some cultures, it's fine to cancel last minute, but in others, that would be super rude.
Wow. So many things to think about.
Okay, last one, ending a conversation politely. Think culture plays a role there too.
I bet it does.
In some cultures, it can be rude to just say, I have to go.
So what do you say instead?
You might give a little explanation like, I need to get back to work, or use softer language like, oh, it was lovely chatting.
It's finding that balance between being polite, but also being clear that the conversation's ending.
Right, right. And remember those nonverbal cues. Turning your back on someone might be rude in some places.
So many subtleties. It's like learning a whole new language of body language.
And even if you're not sure about the cultural norms, a smile and a thank you go a long way. So we've covered a lot in this deep dive. All sorts of everyday English conversations and how culture can play a role. But there's one more thing.
All right, so we've gone through all these scenarios, all those subtle ways culture can really make a difference in how we communicate. But, knowing all this is only half the battle, right? How do we actually get from theory to, actually using this stuff?
Right. Well, remember those practice exercises from the Fluent English Vibes episode? They're really helpful. Repeating those key phrases, even when you're alone, it helps you remember them.
It's like practicing for a play, but without an audience.
Yeah.
But eventually you got to get out there and perform, right?
Exactly. And that's what they emphasize, looking for chances to actually use these phrases. Talk to the barista. Ask someone for directions.
Yeah. Make those little everyday moments count.
And those small interactions, they can be really rewarding, You're getting practice, connecting with people, maybe even making someone's day.
And as you do it more, you start to get a feel for what works and what doesn't. It's like turning your whole life into a language learning experiment.
I like that, a language learning experiment. And speaking of experiments, we talked about this before, but creating that immersion experience at home is huge.
Oh, yeah. That's where you can really get creative.
So movies, TV, podcasts, those are the obvious ones. But think outside the box. Change your phone settings to English. Listen to music in English.
Oh, that's a good one. I should try that.
And the key is to really engage with it,
Yeah.
Don't just passively listen. Write down new words, use them in sentences.
It's like you're building your own little English world around you.
Exactly, making it a natural part of your life. And, at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is confidence. Being able to communicate in a way that feels natural and authentic.
Right. It's about practice and not being afraid to make mistakes.
Exactly. Mistakes are part of the process.
Well said. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Phrases, cultural tips, even building our own language learning labs. But the real journey starts now.
It does. Remember, fluency isn't a finish line, it's a path. Embrace those awkward moments, the times you stumble over words. It's all part of the journey.
I love that. So as you head out into the world of English conversations, keep practicing, keep experimenting, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Yeah. And don't forget, we just scratched the surface here. Think about other situations you might encounter. What are those unique challenges, and how can you adapt these strategies? What if you need to bargain for a price at a market or explain a technical problem? How can you use what we've talked about today to navigate those situations?
What a great question to leave our listeners with. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into everyday English conversations. Keep those conversations flowing.